What's up, Marvel fans? I'm Steven from the Hills Maniacs, and today I'm going to be talking about who I felt were the 5 worst MCU heroes that were introduced in phases 4 and 5. So if you haven't really seen any of my other recent videos that I've done, I've been talking about things from phases 4 and 5 of the MCU, such as the movies and the heroes and things of that nature, as we get ready for, Avengers Doomsday coming up at the end of this year, and we are currently in phase 6. So I wanted to take a look back at the other two phases, 4 and 5, that are kind of building to Avengers Doomsday, and everything that's happened so far is probably going to be tied together in some way in the future. So if you haven't seen those videos yet, go check those out. And throughout the year, I'm going to be doing a bunch of these kind of like list videos pertaining to phases 4 and 5. And of course, like I said, today's video is all about the worst heroes that were introduced in phases 4 and 5. So first up at number 5 is the Eternals. I've talked a bunch of other times about these as well. The fact that these characters were in a movie where a lot of the stuff was crammed into it and a lot of exposition and backstory and everything was given to us all in one basically 2-hour movie, I think kind of ruined the potential for us to learn who these characters are. Like if they had maybe done like a Disney Plus series or something about the history of the Eternals and the Celestials and the Deviants and all that kind of stuff, and we'd gotten more time to sort of expand on it and really learn who these people were, and then they did a movie, I think it would have been a lot better. I just think they kind of like ruined it by having all of this in one movie. Like they should have tried to branch it out a little bit more, because I thought it was kind of interesting, having these characters that are basically like robots or whatever that have existed all this time on every planet in the universe, and they exist solely to make sure that the Celestial that's basically living inside the planet hatches and comes into existence and everything. Like there's an interesting like lore and backstory and everything for these characters. I just wish it was shown to us in a better way, and especially considering that they're probably not doing a follow-up movie to the first Eternals movie. I think they kind of wasted what could have been some interesting characters, I guess, and we probably won't ever see these characters again. So that's why it's on this list. Like I think it kind of failed to deliver on who these characters are, and we don't really get enough time to understand who they are and what their powers are and everything else. It was all just one big like jumbled mess, and it could have been a lot better had they put more effort into it, or like given it to us as a series or something to explain the characters further. Up next at number 4 is Adam Warlock from the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 movie. This is a character that was, basically teased at the end of the second Guardians movie as if he was going to be the next, like, big bad, maybe of the MCU, or even just the big bad for the Guardians to face. Like he was going to be the main villain of the third movie or something. But instead, the way they went about it was they basically made him like a sort of bumbling child that was trying to find his place in the universe and wasn't really out to do anything specific. He was just kind of learning who he is and why he exists and that kind of stuff. Like I get that he did kind of play an important role in that movie because he's the reason that Rocket gets injured in the first place, which sets up the whole events of the movie. But I think if you compare him to the comics version, which I've never really seen, like I don't read a lot of comic books and everything, but I understand that Adam Warlock is supposed to be this like really powerful character, and even at one point I think housed the Mind Stone in his head like Vision did in the in the MCU. So the fact that they made him sort of like a goofball comedy character instead of what he could have been, I feel like was a letdown in my opinion. Like it's almost like he could have not even been a part of this movie, and I think they still could have had the same result for this movie. Like because eventually he ends up joining the heroes, so it was basically like a big waste of time almost. They could have just like saved him for another movie or something if their plan was to, have the High Evolutionary as the villain of that movie, and maybe like revealed him later on or something and kind of saved it for somewhere down the road. But the fact that they portrayed him the way that they did just kind of didn't sit right with me, and it kind of just made it a little bit goofy and silly. Like, I can see them, using him sometime in the future as well, because obviously he's part of like the new Guardians of the Galaxy team that we see at the end of that movie. But as of right now, his introduction to the MCU, I guess, didn't really hit that well, in my opinion. Up next at number 3 is Riri Williams from the Ironheart series. I think my biggest problem, not just with the series itself, but just with the character of Riri in general, is that she seems like a really selfish character. Like, I get that, like, Tony Stark started off like that, and she's supposed to be kind of the next Tony Stark for, like, the young Avengers that are coming up, but her character just seems like a really selfish person. Like, everything she's doing in this series was all for her own agenda, basically. Like, she needed a way to find money in order to fund her own, inventions and everything else, and to create her Iron Man suit. So she becomes a criminal, literally, in this movie, and joins a gang of criminals led by the Hood, who's the main villain of the series, and kind of just joins them without really any problem with that. So I think if they were trying to build her up as a hero, they didn't really do a nice job with that, because she just seems like she's self-centered, and even if she joins the Avengers or something later on, I think everything she does is going to be for herself instead of for other people. She doesn't seem like the type of person that's going to sacrifice herself for others, only to save herself or someone she cares about instead of the whole world or something. But I didn't like that they portrayed her that way. And I think that's why I heard they're like removing the Ironheart series from Disney Plus, just because I think it got bad reviews and people didn't really like it that much. And I think that's a big part of it. Like, this character isn't someone we can get behind because she's kind of rude, she's selfish, and everything else. She doesn't feel like a hero. This felt more like a villain origin story, in my opinion, rather than a hero's origin story. Like, I feel like maybe someday if they do, give her a sort of redemption arc and they really, like, let her become a good person and not be selfish anymore, she could be the next Tony Stark, kind of have that similar character arc and character journey and everything. But as of right now, she just doesn't feel like a hero, in my opinion. She feels like a scumbag or something, basically, just from this portrayal of the character, at least. I don't know if that's how it was in the comics or whatever, but that's the route they decided to take, with the series and everything, and I don't think it worked that well in building her up as one of the next Avengers characters. Next up at number 2 is She-Hulk. I think there was potential for this character, but I just feel like there's really no difference between her and Bruce Banner. So I don't really see the point of her character necessarily. Like, unless they plan on, like, killing off Bruce Banner and killing off the Hulk, and they need the new Hulk character, like, obviously this would make sense. But right now, with Bruce being here and still being a prominent figure in the MCU, and still one of the original Avengers that's around, I don't think we really needed her. And I heard that, Tatiana Maslany doesn't want to play that character anymore, or isn't going to come back to play her, so now this even feels even more pointless, because we might not see that character again in the MCU. So that's another series that kind of just can go by the wayside now. Like, we're going to just kind of forget about it, or they're going to delete from Disney Plus or something and just kind of move past it. So it was basically a waste of time. And I don't think they really did a good job of, like, making us care about her, especially since there's already another way more interesting lawyer character in the MCU, that being Matt Murdock and Daredevil. So, like, in comparison to him, like, he's way better of a character than she is. So she doesn't really need to be part of the MCU right now, in my opinion. And coming in at number 1 is Gaia from Secret Invasion. Like, the idea of Skrulls gaining superpowers in this series, I thought had a lot of promise, and that's really threatening in a way. Like, these characters can mimic the powers of other characters, which we see in the comics, the Super Skrulls. Like, I feel like they could have executed that really well and used that as a threat for, like, the next Avengers movie or something. But the way that they did it in this series was kind of stupid, honestly. Like, they basically gave her and the villain character, like, everyone's superpowers. So then she has the powers of, like, every Avenger or every character that was supposedly involved in the Battle of Endgame. And by doing this, they essentially made her like the most powerful character in the MCU. So that basically would render every other hero we've seen completely useless because, oh, you could just send Gaia in to do something. I know I talked a lot so far about the show more than the character, but I think that because they went that route and gave her these powers and everything, I think it kind of ruined her as a character. Like, it would have been more intriguing had she just kind of like been a Skrull with like one power or something, and then she can join the Avengers and stuff and like mimic the villain or something just to like be a secret tactic or something in order to take them down or whatever. Like, there wouldn't have been anything wrong with giving her one power, but giving her all the powers just kind of didn't make any sense. And especially since a lot of the powers she got didn't really make any sense either, because they claimed that they got like blood from the battle with Thanos and were able to use that to give themselves powers. Well, a lot of the powers she got were characters that weren't even there in the battle with Thanos in Endgame. So it kind of just didn't make any sense. What they did to her character didn't really make any sense. And knowing that Secret Invasion has probably been retconned at this point, it kind of just defeats the purpose of everything anyways. I like the invasion, like the Skrull invasion kind of thing, and the premise of that series and everything. But the character of Gaia from that series, I feel like they kind of butchered because of the way they handled her character and everything. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. How would you have ranked these characters, or who would you have put on this kind of list if you were to do one? Who did you think were the worst MCU heroes that were introduced in phases 4 and 5? Let me know all that down in the comments section. Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more Marvel-related content. And like I said earlier, check out the other videos I've done this year so far. All these kind of like lists like this. And keep an eye out for any that I do in the future as well as we get closer to Avengers Doomsday. And as always, thank you for watching the video, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.